Today is Friday, September 8th, 2023, and this is the Dunkley Report. That 70s show star, Danny Masterson, has been sentenced to 30 years to life in prison for the rapes of 2 women 2 decades ago. Los Angeles Judge Charlene Olmedo handed down the sentence to the 47-year-old Masterson at a hearing on Thursday. Masterson was convicted of raping 2 women at his Hollywood area home in 2003. Both women gave statements in court Thursday on the trauma they experienced and the suffering it brought them in the years since. Masterson maintains his innocence, and his attorneys plan to appeal. The jury was deadlocked, and a mistrial was declared on a 3rd rape count involving Masterson's former girlfriend. Trump White House official Peter Navarro has been convicted of contempt of Congress charges for refusing to cooperate with a congressional investigation into the January 6th Capitol attack. Thursday's verdict came after a short trial for Navarro, a trade advisor under President Donald Trump who later promoted the Republicans' baseless claims of 2020 election voter fraud. Navarro was charged with 2 misdemeanor counts, both punishable by up to a year behind bars. Navarro vowed to appeal, arguing that he was protected by executive privilege. Trump White House advisor Steve Bannon was convicted of 2 counts of contempt of Congress and was sentenced to 4 months behind bars, but he has appealed. Rescuers from across Europe rushed to a cave in Turkey to save an American researcher who became trapped around 1,000 meters below the cave's entrance after suffering stomach bleeding. The 40-year-old Mark Dickey suddenly became ill during an expedition with a handful of others, including 3 other Americans, in the Morka Cave in southern Turkey's Taurus Mountains. A New Jersey-based cave rescue group he's affiliated with says Dickey has been bleeding and losing fluid from his stomach. In a video message from inside the cave and made available Thursday by Turkey's Communications Directorate, Dickey thanked the caving community and the Turkish government for their efforts to save him. Victims of a deadly Russian missile attack have been laid to rest in eastern Ukraine. The bodies of Mykola and Natalia Shirai were laid to rest in a village outside of the city of Kostiantynivka on Thursday in the Donetsk region, after an attack killed 16 people and wounded 33. Ukrainian officials say Russia also struck the port area of Izmail along the Danube River for a 4th time in 5 days. Odessa's regional governor says the port area was attacked with Iranian-made Shahed drones overnight. Both attacks overshadowed a 2-day visit by U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, which was aimed at assessing Ukraine's 3-month-old counteroffensive and signaling continued U.S. support. President Joe Biden hopes to demonstrate at the upcoming Group of 20 summit in India and a visit to Vietnam that the United States and like-minded allies can be more trustworthy partners than China on economic and security issues. White House officials say Biden, at the summit, will spotlight a U.S. plan to increase by $200 billion the lending power of the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. That's an attempt to offer an alternative to China's massive Belt and Road Infrastructure Initiative, which the U.S. views as a Trojan horse for Chinese military expansion. In Vietnam, Biden is expected to announce plans to tighten economic cooperation between the countries. Military officials say an Alabama senator's hold on top promotions in a clash over abortion policy raises national security concerns. Republican Senator Tommy Tuberville is leading the blockade and warns of a long standoff on hundreds of nominations. Tuberville wants the Pentagon to rescind its policy to pay for travel when a service member goes out of state to get an abortion. The lack of progress on nominations has prompted Pentagon officials to go on a public relations offensive as the Senate returns to Washington after 5 weeks away. A Tuberville spokesman said Thursday there's been no contact with the Biden administration about the holds at the principal or staff level since mid-July. Concern for U.S. democracy has prompted the entities supporting 13 presidential libraries dating back to Herbert Hoover to call for a recommitment to the country's bedrock principles, including the rule of law and respecting diverse beliefs. Thursday's bipartisan statement from presidential centers, foundations, and institutes marks the first time the libraries have joined to make such a public declaration. The statement says Americans have a strong interest in supporting democratic movements and human rights worldwide because free societies elsewhere contribute to our own security and prosperity here at home. The statement says that interest is undermined when others see our own house in disarray. The message urges Americans to respect democratic institutions. The first day of school is providing challenges for major U.S. cities that are struggling with the influx of tens of thousands of migrants. In New York City alone, public schools have opened classrooms to nearly 20,000 children arriving with parents seeking asylum. Schools could face further challenges in coming months because of a recent spike in the number of families illegally entering the U.S. from Mexico. The increasing number of families means schools will have to educate more migrant children. Despite being overwhelmed for months by the migrant crisis, New York City school officials are assuring parents and community groups that the city is prepared to handle the rise in newly arrived students. U.S. Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh has told attendees at a judicial conference in Ohio that addressing recent ethics concerns can increase public confidence in the institution. He gave no details but said he hopes there'll be some concrete steps soon in the Supreme Court's review of the issue. He stopped short of speaking about recent calls for justices to institute an official code of conduct. Kavanaugh took questions from the chief judge and a judge from the 6th U.S. Circuit Court at a conference attended by judges, attorneys, and court personnel. Takia Young planned to move her growing family into a place of her own, and was just steps away from achieving that goal. She will now never have that chance. The 21-year-old pregnant black woman was fatally shot by police in a supermarket parking lot near Columbus, Ohio, on August 24th. Young's family held a funeral for her on Thursday. She lay in a casket with a clear lid, dressed in fuchsia, with the body of her unborn child lying in her embrace. Her surviving relatives want the officer who shot her to be immediately fired and charged in her death. Today's news was reported by the Associated Press. This has been the World News for Friday, September 8th, 2023. Thanks again for joining us at The Dunkley Report.